The night was thick with stillness, the kind of silence that made every sound sharper, every laugh or crash louder than it should be. The roadside diner sat like a lone outpost in the dark, its neon sign buzzing faintly above the glass doors, one tube flickering like it might give up any second. Inside, the clatter of dishes and the muted hum of the jukebox tried to create a sense of normalcy, but it felt more like a backdrop to something about to happen. Clara, working the late shift again, was the only waitress tonight. Her feet ached, her smile had grown thinner with every passing hour, but she kept moving, balancing trays and topping off mugs with a patience she'd taught herself over the years. She had seen all kinds of people pass through, truckers, travelers, drifters, but she could feel in her bones that the three men by the window weren't just passing through. They had swaggered in about half an hour ago, their boots loud on the linoleum, their jackets heavy with patches that looked like warnings. They claimed a booth as though they owned it, sprawling across the seats, talking too loud for such a quiet place. From the start, their eyes lingered too long on Clara, following her every movement. She tried to brush it off, tried to treat them like any other customers, but their grins told her they weren't here just for food. The leader, a big man with shoulders that stretched the seams of his jacket and a scar slashing across his cheek, was the loudest. He drummed his fingers on the table, his rings clicking against the surface. When Clara brought their first round of coffee, he caught her wrist just enough to make her pause. "Sweetheart," he drawled, his voice raspy with smoke and whiskey, "you sure you can handle us three? You look like you might spill more than you serve." His buddies laughed, a sound that was more mockery than amusement. Clara pulled her hand back and forced the kind of smile that waitresses learn, polite, even, detached. "Enjoy your coffee," she said softly, moving away before they could grab her again. But they didn't stop. Every time she walked past, they made comments, each one sharper, each one designed to cut into her calm. One of them whistled, another muttered something crude under his breath, and the third leaned back, blocking her path with his boot stretched across the aisle. Clara tried to step over it without drawing attention, but her balance slipped, the tray she carried rattled, and before she knew it, glasses crashed onto the floor. The noise rang out like a gunshot in the still diner, drawing every eye. Her cheeks burned as she crouched to gather the shards, trying to ignore the laughter behind her. The scarred man rose from his seat and crouched down, far too close, his presence pressing on her like a weight. "Clumsy little thing, ain't you?" he sneered, his breath hot and bitter with alcohol. "Bet you'd drop everything if I whispered in your ear long enough." His finger traced dangerously close to her jaw. Clara flinched back, nearly cutting herself on the glass. She wanted to stand, to tell him to back off, but her voice stuck in her throat. She looked around. An older couple kept their eyes firmly on their food, pretending they hadn't noticed. A trucker at the bar shifted like he might say something, but then he thought better of it and stayed quiet. The silence of others only made the laughter of the men feel louder, crueler. The scarred man straightened, his shadow falling over her as he cracked his knuckles. "Nobody's gonna help you out here, girl. So maybe show us a little more gratitude." His friends rose too, their boots heavy on the floor, their movements slow, deliberate, as if to box her in. Clara backed up against the counter, her hands trembling as she clutched a towel, the broken glass forgotten at her feet. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. The scarred man's grin widened, the cruel anticipation in his eyes leaving no doubt about what he intended. And then the bell above the door jingled. It was such a small sound, but it split the tension like a blade. The cold night air spilled into the diner as the door swung wide, and in stepped figures that changed the air entirely. Heavy boots struck the floorboards, the faint scent of gasoline and leather following them. 5 men filled the doorway, their broad shoulders and weathered faces casting shadows across the linoleum. Their vests bore colors the thugs recognized instantly, patches that carried reputation and weight. For the first time that night, the scarred man froze. His smirk faltered, and his friends shifted uneasily. The leader of the newcomers, a tall man with a gray beard and sharp, steady eyes, looked around the room with quiet authority. His gaze lingered on Clara, pale, trembling, cornered, and then shifted back to the 3 men. No one spoke, but the silence was no longer heavy with fear. It was thick with a new kind of expectation. The thugs had been laughing only moments before, but now their faces hardened, their confidence cracked. Clara didn't know who the bikers were, but she saw the change ripple across her tormentors, and for the first time that night, she felt her breath catch with something other than dread. It was hope. The bell above the door stilled, the faint jingle fading into silence as the 5 bikers stepped fully inside. Their boots struck the floorboards with a slow, deliberate rhythm, each step announcing their presence without the need for words. The gray-bearded man at the front had a steady, weathered face, the kind that carried authority without even trying. His eyes scanned the room once, landing on Clara still pressed against the counter, then moving to the 3 thugs stiffening by the window booth. The diner seemed to shrink, the air growing dense as though it knew a line had just been crossed. "Evenin'," the biker said calmly, his voice low but resonant. He didn't raise it, didn't need to. The weight in his tone did more than any shout could. "We got a problem here." The scarred man straightened, though his grin faltered at the edges. He forced out a chuckle, glancing at his 2 buddies for backup. "Nah, no problem, just having a little fun with the waitress. She's fine, ain't she?" He turned to Clara, who shrank back at the sound of his voice. Her silence was louder than any denial. The gray-bearded biker's eyes didn't leave Clara. He caught the trembling in her hands, the pallor of her face, the shards of glass at her feet. He looked back at the scarred man with a stare so sharp it cut through the forced bravado. "Doesn't look fine to me." The other bikers spread slightly, not threatening but making it clear they weren't here to sit quietly and watch. One of them, younger with tattooed arms and a jaw like carved stone, rolled his shoulders as though warming them. His voice came out rough. "You boys like pickin' on waitresses. That what gets you through the night?" The second thug stepped forward, puffing out his chest as if to remind himself he wasn't afraid. "We didn't touch her. You're blowing this out of proportion." His tone cracked just enough to betray the lie. The biker leader didn't move closer, but the air around him seemed to. "Doesn't matter what you say. I can see what she feels. That's enough." The scarred man's smirk slipped, frustration brewing under his skin. He wasn't used to being challenged, not out here where the road stretched empty for miles. "Look, old man," he snapped, "we were just joking. If she can't take a laugh, that's her problem." "Funny," the biker replied without blinking, "I don't hear anyone laughing." The room seemed to press tighter. The older couple in the corner exchanged quick glances but didn't look away this time. The trucker at the bar leaned back, waiting. Everyone could feel the balance tilting. The tallest of the bikers, a giant with a bald head and arms thicker than fence posts, stepped up beside his leader. He crossed his arms and tilted his head toward the door. "Clock's tickin'. You gonna walk out, or we gonna walk you out?" The scarred man swallowed, the veins in his neck tightening. His pride was a chain around his throat, pulling him toward a fight he didn't want. He looked at his friends, hoping for some sign of backing, but they both shifted nervously, unwilling to make the first move. For the first time, Clara noticed the fear in their eyes. It wasn't hers anymore, it was theirs. Finally, the leader of the thugs muttered, "Come on, let's go." His words were reluctant, but they carried the truth of defeat. One of his friends hesitated, glaring at the bikers as if trying to hold onto some shred of dignity. But the moment passed quickly, and they started edging toward the door. Before leaving, the scarred man paused, his eyes narrowing on Clara. "This ain't over," he hissed under his breath. The gray-bearded biker stepped forward then, his boots echoing like hammer strikes. He stopped only a foot away, close enough that the scarred man had to tilt his head to meet his eyes. "You're right," the biker said, his voice so calm it was terrifying. "It's over now, you just don't know it yet." The thug broke eye contact first. He shoved the door open, and the 3 of them disappeared into the night. Moments later, the sound of their truck roared to life outside, tires squealing as they tore off down the highway. Inside, the diner let out a collective exhale. The older couple relaxed, the trucker tipped his mug in silent gratitude, and Clara finally lowered the towel she'd been clutching like a shield. Her knees felt weak, but relief was washing over her in trembling waves. The bikers didn't gloat or boast. They simply settled into seats at the counter, as if they had come here only for pie and coffee after a long ride. The tattooed one winked at Clara when she set down mugs in front of them. "Don't worry, darlin', we'll keep an eye on this stretch. They won't be bothering you again." Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Thank you." The gray-bearded biker gave her a small nod, his expression softer now. "You don't owe us thanks. You just deserve respect, always." Clara blinked back tears, her first real smile of the night breaking through. For the first time in hours, the diner felt safe again.